What's up, BrentWofford here. Today I am joined by Chasen Gibbel of VIP Insurance Professionals. Did I get that right?
That's a mouthful, but you got it.
It is. Awesome. So Chasen is a local insurance agent here in Prescott, Arizona. Covers everything from cars to houses to
commercial,
boats.
Yep. Boats,
Not that we
RVs.
have a bunch of those.
Toys,
RVs, we got a ton of RVs up here.
Yeah.
So
side-by-sides, all the fun stuff.
Awesome.
Toys, yeah.
So today we're going to go over what you need to know as a homeowner or future homeowner here in Northern Arizona regarding specifically property insurance, because that's kind of, what we're dealing with buying homes and stuff. But I want you to lean in a little bit later on how people can potentially package those with auto and other things to get discounts.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
We'll get into that here in a little bit, but let's just dive right into it, man.
Yeah.
So Northern Arizona risks, can we take some time talking about that?
Yeah, I mean, the big one, right, is going to be fire. That's kind of the biggest concern. The one, I think, as realtors or mortgage lenders, they run into the biggest headache of trying to get a property that they're closing on insured.
Yeah, it's a hot topic right now.
Dun-dun-dun. Yeah.
Bad joke.
Looking into it, you always try to assess, the area you're in, what does it look like? There's a great website that I think every homeowner should take a look at. It's called firststreet.org. You can put your city in there, and it'll not only show your kind of fire score and your fire areas, it'll show your flood zone, wind zone, kind of all the environmental factors that you might want to know if, hey, I'm looking to buy a property, or I already have a property, but I want to know how to maintain it better, or what risks might be associated with owning this kind of long term. So kind of starting with there and taking a look at it, seeing where you're at, and you can see if you put it up on the podcast, Prescott and Prescott Valley even, definitely a hot spot, especially Prescott. I mean, as we kind of get into the surrounding area, this beautiful national forest, that's really the high concern.
Is it fire risk? Is that the main thing?
Correct, yeah. Now, we do a great job, I think, the fire department does, of doing prescribed burns and cleanup, and that's a big part of it, especially lately. I think the fire department knows now in town, the chief knows that, hey, we got to take more action. We have to kind of do more work in the community so that these people can get insurance, because unfortunately, there's a lot of homes we can't get insurance for, or if we can, it's a tremendous amount of money every month. So.
Yeah, I know the Prescott National Forest does a lot of prescribed burns around here, and then out north too in Coconino County, they're doing a ton of prescribed burns southwest of Flagstaff.
Yeah, just
I've
preventative.
been seeing those lately.
Yeah, preventative as much as they can, maintenance to the forest. So that's a good thing, and there's some positives if anyone's struggling with it, kind of looking in the future. Things are improving. I don't want to be a pessimist. I want to tell people, we're improving. The fire department's really working well, talking to officials, and the insurance companies too. They are getting involved. They're telling the government kind of officials of the town, like, hey, look, if there's a road to this home and there's only one way in and one way out, you need to get a permit and make the road kind of do a complete loop, go out to another section, so that those first responders, can get, have an easier time accessing, rather than hey, there's only one way out, and there's a disaster and it's blocked. They can't get to those homes affected or to that situation. So stuff like that, we're seeing that not just from local governments and fire departments, but from the insurance company themselves having identified the issues, and then kind of communicating and reaching out to communities and saying, hey, this is what you can do to improve the cost of the premium or just the over coverage of your area.
And how are they assessing wildfire risks in specific areas? So an example would be here in the Prescott area, greater Prescott area, you've got Walker down south, up south.
Yeah.
I always want to say down south, right?
Yeah.
No, it's higher elevation. They're pushing 6,000 feet elevation out there, a little bit more?
Yeah, I think Thumb Butte is around 6,000 feet in that area. There's a multitude of ways I kind of assess it. The real way they're looking at it, right, is what's the response time to a first responder to getting to that situation, to the home that has an issue. And if it's longer than 6 minutes, it's kind of well, can we even get anyone insured or covered there? Of course, looking overall, every home is actually individual. Some properties I might be able to insure no problem. Other ones right next to it, they might have a bunch of trees or brush on that property. Is it touching the roof, that kind of stuff. So there's even some stuff individuals can do to their own property to kind of get it covered. But yeah, really how they assess it, it's just, where is it at? How's the wind there? How many trees are there? What's the roads, in and out kind of look like? How close is that the fire department? And the big one is obviously the water source. Is that water source more than 1,000 feet away? So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, like Walker, they have the fire station right there in the middle of Walker.
They do.
So does that help you as an insurance agent then, insuring some houses right there in that vicinity?
It's a start to it, right? Yeah, definitely it's helping. But still, we need to see the roads improve. We still need to see...
Yeah, some of those roads are pretty rough back there.
Yeah,
privately maintained and...
Exactly. So if it's in a really if it's a snowy winter and they can't get through because the snow's piled so high on that road, fire station could be only a mile away, which is a great distance. But it won't matter if they can't get to them due to the road conditions. So, like I said, it's just a generalized kind of handful of factors that give these companies that score.
That's interesting. You had mentioned the homeowners doing some things to mitigate wildfire risks. What about being in a fire-wise community? Does that help at all?
It definitely does. Having yard and cleanup all around, because like I said, my house could be perfectly maintained, and if your house is next to mine, but you have a ton of overgrown trees and branches extending into my yard, while it's not on my property, that insurance company does look at that from aerial views that they do these inspections with, and they say, hey, you guys have got to come to agreement. You guys got to get that tree not on your property, but kind of cleaned up and trimmed down. So, yeah, having the community come together and having off-duty firefighters that have their own companies that will come and do cleanup. There's a lot of those in town that really helps as well. So kind of being proactive in looking at your property and saying, hey, how do I minimize my risk? What can I do myself, on my own property? Yeah.
Are there different types of coverage for fires and when it comes to wildfires, or is it all pretty much the same?
It's going to be pretty much the same. Unfortunately, we're starting to see even Walker or Potato Patch, companies will insure the home, but they exclude wildfire risk. So you have fire risk, if it was internal in the home.
So if you burn your own house down, you're good, but if
there's
somebody else burns your house down.
Yeah, so we're starting to see that because people still need coverage.
That's interesting.
But the company's like, hey, this is going to be a catastrophic loss. They're not in business to lose money constantly. So, we'll see stuff like that where, wildfire will be excluded.
Yeah.
So,
how much of a change have you seen recently, when I say recently, in the past couple weeks, because of the fires in California?
I think at the beginning of the year, we were seeing some improvement. We have some companies that had already been chatting and having dialogue with local government officials and the new fire chief about what they want to see, what they want to do, and they were seeing those changes implemented, and it was looking good. Unfortunately, though, due to those fires, we're going to see some premium changes. Of course, it's just the nature of, if you think about insurance as a group, right? It's kind of like health insurance, right? You want a bigger group, that kind of changes how risks are decided and premiums go. We're going to see an increase, I think. I hope I'm wrong. I hope for whatever reason. But, yeah, unfortunately, we have a loss that catastrophic. It trickles down. But, like I said, the positives, and I might be wrong just because of how proactive I think we are in this community of combating those, of being prepared and doing the right maintenance to get ourselves in a position where that kind of catastrophic loss won't happen, or it stops rather soon, rather than kind of engulfs an entire town, unfortunately, like we see in California.
That was a tragedy.
Really
crazy.
Was. It hurt, yeah, because you saw, I think it's billions of dollars just gone.
Yeah.
Schools, homes, businesses, everything, and it wasn't. Yeah, it didn't have an appetite for.
Yeah, it wasn't just the rich people's homes. That's the misconception right now. People are saying Palisades Fire, the millionaires, they can afford to rebuild. But there was so many people in there that lived in there their whole life that just because their home was worth over $1 million today doesn't mean it was anywhere near that when they bought it 20, 30 years ago.
And we see the same thing here, right?
Yeah.
Some of these homes, people have been here 20, 30 years, and the property values have just skyrocketed. And so, they may not be able to afford to rebuild that house on their own. So, yeah.
Anything else about fire we should talk about or cover before moving on?
Yeah, I think just to kind of sum it up, just be proactive, right, in your yard, and think about it first. Hey, look, do I have any trees overhanging on my roof? Do I have all this brush and all this pine everywhere? Can I clean that up on my own? If everyone kind of does that, it's like I said, it's not just your home that gets affected. It'll be everyone's home, because it'll reduce the risk for your entire community. So as everyone kind of comes together, kind of keeps this stuff in mind, I think overall we could see premiums kind of drop, or see coverage be offered to places in town that really don't see a lot of coverage being offered. But yeah.
I just thought of another question.
Go for it.
And you may or may not know the answer, but does the roof type change your risk or your insurance premium? Like, say, if you've got a metal roof versus a shingle roof, or versus like wood roof,
Yep.
Obviously that's going to be a tinderbox. But what's your experience with that so far?
Well, I'll roll this question into probably another good discussion to have, because we do see a lot of hail here, right? We do see heavy rain and snow. So absolutely, the quality of the roof, the age of the roof is huge. Anything over 20 years, it's really difficult to get coverage. And if you can, you're seeing a higher premium. But yeah, the quality, the build type of that roof does matter. For overall fires tend not to care what material it is. It's going to burn everything underneath it, right? So if everything has gone underneath it, roof's still going to collapse.
Yeah.
But you do see a less of a premium when we do see these metal or hail-resistant kind of rubber type shingle roofs or ceramic tile roofs. We do see, the insurance companies looking at that and saying, hey, look, the chance that we're going to get hail and wind damage from any of these storms that come in is going to be a lot less, or none at all, right? So if you do have an older roof, let's call it 15 years old. I know that sounds wild, that's old, but that's now considered old, and it's shingle, and we're starting to see some grain loss and some warping, and we do have a big hail and windstorm, chances are we're going to start losing tiles and stuff. And so it's one thing to just get that replaced in spots, but what these companies now want to see is the whole roof removed, all new, plyboard underneath, and then a whole new either shingles or metal roof or whatever it is being covered up and over that. That's really what they want.
Is insurance paying for that when you've got a hail damaged roof?
Yeah, if you do have a big claim and there's massive damage, right, they're going to cover that roof and replace it all. And every company is a little different, and every storm's a little different. So I don't want to say yes to everything, because there's a lot of situations. I'm sure people are probably saying, nope, my roof wasn't covered and I had this damage. So it is kind of tricky in that regards when you go to file the claim. But yeah, those metal roofs, we're not really seeing a whole lot of damage. It's metal versus
That's good to know.
A 10 to 15-year-old shingle roof that's already been through 10 seasons of hail and wind here, like we do see. It's going to be a little more battered. So, unfortunately, it is a cost. There's some great roofers in this town, but I definitely recommend people, if they're at that 15 to 20-year mark, it's probably time to kind of put some money aside and have that preemptively done. And then maybe even go the metal roof route, right, where you'll get more time out of it, you'll get a lot less premium. You could save yourself, $1,200 a year, which, if you figure that over 15 years, that's the cost to replace that roof. But you don't have to go through the headache of finding new insurance companies, and at least you have a new roof, right? It might be even better insulated or whatnot. So there's some advantages to kind of just preemptively doing that, rather than paying the insurance company that money and then you're still going to have to get a new roof at some point anyways. So
yeah. Are you seeing a difference between metal roofs and concrete tile roofs?
A little bit.
As far as the premium goes, which one has a better premium?
The metal roof is great. I
Really?
mean, it's the newest technology, right? They're really coming out with some better stuff. I from what I've seen, it all depends, right? Because you can have a better quality tile than metal, but vice versa. So it's kind of tricky. But those concrete tile, they're great. They do last a long time. But even then, insurance companies are really only warranting them for, I think 20 to 25 years.
Yeah.
Anything past that, you're kind of out of luck.
You know why, right?
For
the concrete tile roofs, why they're stopping it at that age limit?
I don't. Why don't you tell me?
It's because of the underlayment deteriorates.
Right, underneath it.
Yeah. So the concrete tiles themselves don't. I mean, unless it's like, I don't even, dude, you'd have to have some big hail to break some concrete tiles.
And that brings me back to my point to kind of answer the question. They don't want to just see new tires and shingles. They want that plyboard underneath.
Yeah.
That's when you think of a roof, right? I don't even think of a roof now as shingles. That's maybe I didn't answer your question because I was like, no, that's the whole. That is replacing the roof. Is everything comes off down to where you can see your insulation, on your top of the ceiling there, and then they put all new plyboard, all new shingles. That's really the definition of replacing the roof.
Well, because you're in insurance, so that's where you're thinking of the roof system versus most homeowners. When you say the word roof, they're thinking of just what they visually, what they can visually see, whether that be the shingles or the concrete tiles or the metal.
Something something else to think about too is you have solar panels. At some point you're going to have to replace that roof. So just kind of think in advance, like, hey, these panels are going to have to get pulled off. They're going to have to get stored somewhere, then reinstalled onto this brand new roof. So sometimes even like things like solar panels kind of add some complications to that. But a roof is really everything underneath the tiling as well. It's a whole system of a roof. So. Yeah.
Well, and typically around here, when we see hail and wind damage, it's monsoon season, right? Because we get those big, crazy aggressive monsoon storms that'll come through.
Oh, yeah.
Which we didn't last year.
2021, I think, was a pretty severe one.
Yeah.
We're still seeing claims for that, and that sits on the home for 5 to 7 years at least when we go to rate them. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
So with that being said, monsoon season, how does flash flooding or flood zones play a factor into insurance risk?
Yeah, that's going to really be a separate policy, right? Because flood isn't covered under.
So that's separate.
Ratio. Yeah, it will be a separate policy, depending on what zone you're on. And again, First Street, it'll tell you, hey, look, you're in a flood zone or not, and your lender will know because that mortgage company has a good idea of where all this stuff was, and they'll require flood insurance as well as normal insurance. But kind of again with fire scores, the most you can do around your property, kind of prepare for that, the better. You want to minimize your risk yourself. You don't want to rely on insurance being like the commodity to just kind of continue to fix things that have been damaged in storms and stuff. If you can go out there on your own, out of your own pocketbook, and see something like, hey, I'm going to get that fixed or replaced, that's really the best thing. Because what we're seeing, if you do have these claims for hail or any flooding that comes up, and we know monsoon season, downtown floods. I mean, you see debris everywhere. Some streets are closed down, do not drive through. Yeah. So, as much as you can do right now preventively, although, overall flooding here, it's a concern, but the homes are pretty well built. The drainage systems are, when they built all this stuff, they kind of had an idea of where the water can go and not go. So it's not a huge issue, here, to be honest. I think fire scores are impacting homes much more than the flooding. And then age of the roofs, like we were just talking about, those are really the two key things. But kind of going into flooding, look at your yard. Do you see any drains that are clogged? Do you see gutters that are clogged? Do you have the correct gutter systems that kind of leads water out and away from around the kind of slab or the basement of the house? Stuff like that. That goes a long way. So. Yeah.
Interesting. What about extreme temperatures? So, here we get to 101, 102 in the summertime. Verde Valley, they're getting a little bit warmer than us. And then in the wintertime, we're in the teens. Flagstaff's in the single digits.
Yeah.
Does that play a factor at all for you guys?
It definitely can in the summer. Not so much here, although the wind isn't great sometimes. But places kind of like Vail, kind of north of Tucson and stuff like that, they will get kind of those fire wind warnings where it's extreme heat. It's kind of windy down there. They'll get the brush fire. So we'll see that as agents. If I'm going to go write a property, these companies will kind of have an alert that comes up and says, hey, no binding in these zip codes due to the increased risk of heat and fire potentially fire right now. So
what does that mean, binding?
Binding. So if we're gonna, it's a contract, right? A binding contract. So insurance is a contract. So
so
we call
policy?
We call it. Your policy is a bound contract between you and that insurance company. So they won't let us sign those contracts, or they won't write the contracts to be bound for that. So it's not too much of a concern for us here in Prescott, but there are parts of Arizona that definitely we see that every single summer season. Hey, do not bind, do not bind. So right now we're seeing it, unfortunately, in a lot of places in California. They're just kind of letting you know. Or unfortunately, the Carolinas too got hit by that pretty bad hurricane.
Yeah.
So we're seeing it over there and in Florida.
Man, any other Northern Arizona specific risks that we haven't covered that you can think of?
Not that I can think of. We really don't get earthquakes at all. That's not a thing here. So not too worrisome. And again, temperatures in Northern Arizona, we do get cold and we do get heat. But most in 2025, most of the products we use and stuff for that are built for that kind of thermal dynamic kind of consumption. So it's not a huge factor in everything. It's more just the age of things kind of creeping in and stuff like that. So
you brought up solar panels. So because they're fixed onto the house and screwed onto the house, if a bad hailstorm came through and damaged solar panels, would that be a claim under the homeowner's insurance?
Yes and no, right? It depends how the policy is written. It has to be on there. So we have to notify. There has to be that endorsement for panels, how many panels are on there, and then they kind of give that calculation that rolls in the premium. Now, I can attest to this because I just went through this with my own solar panels on my roof. The company I went through has a separate insurance policy that they carry on those panels. So if something does go wrong or damage, what I would suggest is if you do have that, call that company first and have them file their own claim on that. Don't file it through your company if possible, right? Sometimes I guess you have to, but that way that claim stays off your record and sticks to the warranty of the solar panel company. So in my instance, it took a little bit, but I kept calling, and they come out and they had replaced, I think 80% of my panels ended up getting damaged by a solar storm. No, a solar storm took them out of all things. Yeah,
interesting.
No physical damage, but all the electronics got cooked and everything, and they were aware of that. It was this must have been March or April of last year this happened. And so a lot of my neighbors had the same kind of issue, and we're all going through the process of hopefully everyone just going through the company they got the panels from and not your actual carrier. But yeah, they will cover those if it's covered in that what we call a deck page, right? That's that page that's going to show all your coverages. Super important to go through that, understand what all that means. I guess a fun tip I can really quickly give out. When you look at coverage A, that's going to be your main coverage. Everyone looks at that and says, hey, I paid $1.5 million for my home. Why isn't coverage A $1.5 million? Why is it only $800,000? Well, what that coverage is, it's the cost to rebuild the home, not the cost to replace all the land and buy a whole new house somewhere else. So that's kind of a big misconception that I run into with clients sometimes. Like, I want my whole property covered. Well, you really only get the cost to rebuild the house and then other coverages for the contents inside of it. But the land and everything else normally would be okay. So, yeah.
Okay, cool. Let's take a quick break.
Yeah.
And then we'll come back and we'll go over tips and other considerations you might have.
Let's do it.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the Northern Arizona Real Estate Podcast today with our special guest, Chasen Gibbel of VIP Insurance Professionals. Be sure to join us next week as we pick up where we left off. Chasen has some great tips and considerations regarding home insurance that you're going to want to know about. Until then, stay rad.